December 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. America enters the war. While Hollywood mobilizes its stars to sell war bonds and boost morale, one woman stares at her reflection in the mirror of a luxurious Beverly Hills mansion, suffocating under the weight of her own beauty. Hedy Lamarr. The most beautiful woman in the world, they said, the face that launched 1,000 films. But behind those dark eyes lies a mind that Hollywood refuses to see, a mind that understands weapons systems, radio frequencies, and the mathematics of destruction. She thinks about the Atlantic, about Allied ships being torpedoed by German U-boats, about young sailors drowning in freezing water, because radio-controlled torpedoes can be jammed, intercepted, detected, about a war being lost in the invisible realm of electromagnetic waves. Hedy knows something the generals don't know yet. She knows the enemy's weakness isn't in their weapons, it's in their predictability. Every radio signal follows a fixed frequency. Every torpedo guidance system can be disrupted by simply finding that frequency and flooding it with interference. It's elegant, it's devastating, it's solvable, but she's just an actress. The studio calls, another photo shoot, another interview where they ask about her beauty routine, her romantic life, her favorite lipstick shade. Never about the physics books she reads at night, never about the weapons manufacturing secrets she absorbed during those suffocating dinners with her first husband, Fritz Mandl, the Austrian arms dealer who paraded her like a trophy before Nazi officers and military engineers. Those dinners were her education. While men discussed torpedo guidance systems and radio-controlled bombs, assuming the beautiful actress understood nothing, Hedy listened. She absorbed. She learned that wars aren't won by the strongest weapons, but by the smartest communication systems. Now sitting in her Hollywood mansion while war rages across 2 oceans, she feels the dissonance tearing her apart. America needs scientists, engineers, innovators. America has Hedy Lamarr, but sees only her face. She walks to her piano, sits, places her hands on the keys. The solution has been forming in her mind for months, inspired by an unlikely source: player pianos. Those mechanical instruments that play themselves, following patterns punched into rolls of paper, switching between notes in predetermined sequences. What if radio signals could work the same way? What if torpedoes and their control stations could hop between frequencies, synchronized like dancers? Impossible to jam because the enemy would never know which frequency to block. Frequency hopping, secret communication, unbreakable signals. The mathematics crystallize in her mind. 88 frequencies, 1 for each key on a piano, synchronized switching, random patterns. The torpedo and its controller dancing together through the electromagnetic spectrum, while the enemy drowns in static. She needs help. Not from the studio, not from the directors who see her only as decoration. She needs someone who understands both music and mathematics. Someone eccentric enough to take a Hollywood actress seriously. George Antheil, the avant-garde composer, the man who once synchronized 16-player pianos in a single concert. If anyone can transform her vision into reality, it's him. Hedy picks up the phone. Her hand trembles slightly. This call will change everything, or change nothing. In a world at war, will anyone listen to the beautiful woman with the dangerous mind? The line connects. She speaks. The invention that will create Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS, that will reshape human communication itself, begins with a simple introduction between an actress and a composer, 2 artists about to become unlikely warriors in the invisible war of frequencies. But first, they must make the world believe them. Vienna, 1933, 8 years before that phone call, before Hollywood, before America, before freedom. Hedy Lamarr, not yet Lamarr, sits at an opulent dinner table surrounded by men who will help build Hitler's war machine. Her husband, Friedrich Mandl, sits at the head like a king presiding over his court. He owns Austria's largest ammunition factories. He sells weapons to Mussolini, to Hitler, to anyone with money and ambition for conquest, and Hedy is his most prized possession. She wears an emerald necklace that costs more than most Austrians earn in a lifetime. She smiles on command. She remains silent while generals and engineers discuss torpedo detonation systems, anti-aircraft capabilities, radio-controlled weapons. Mandel expects her to be beautiful and mute, a living decoration to demonstrate his wealth and taste. But Hedy listens. She always listens. Tonight, a German naval engineer describes the vulnerability of their newest torpedo guidance systems. The technology is revolutionary. Radio waves guide the weapon toward its target with unprecedented accuracy. But there's a fatal flaw. The radio frequency remains constant, predictable. Enemy ships equipped with jamming equipment can flood that frequency with interference, rendering the torpedo useless. Millions of Reichsmarks invested in weapons that can be neutralized by simple radio static. The men debate solutions: stronger signals, better shielding, more powerful transmitters, all missing the fundamental problem. The frequency never changes. Hedy wants to speak, wants to suggest that perhaps the frequency should vary, should move, should become unpredictable. But Mandel's hand rests on her arm, a gentle warning. Beautiful wives don't interrupt important men. She swallows her words like poison. This becomes her life. Dinner after dinner, meeting after meeting. She absorbs technical knowledge like a sponge while playing the role of ornamental wife. She learns about munitions manufacturing, weapons engineering, military communications. Her mind catalogues everything: specifications, vulnerabilities, potential innovations, but her soul suffocates. Mandel grows increasingly controlling. He buys every copy of her controversial Czech film, trying to erase evidence of her past. He forbids her from returning to acting. He monitors her movements, her conversations, her letters. The mansion becomes a gilded cage. The emerald necklace becomes a collar. She realizes a terrible truth. She married a man who collects beautiful things and locks them away. She is another acquisition in his arsenal, displayed occasionally, controlled constantly, never truly possessed, because possession requires recognizing humanity. The war approaches. Austria teeters on the edge of Nazi annexation. Mandel's weapons factories prepare to serve the Third Reich, and Hedy understands that if she stays, she will become complicit in building the machinery of genocide. One night in 1937, during a dinner party, she excuses herself to the bathroom. She walks past it, down the servants' walk stairs, out a side entrance. She wears only her evening gown and the emerald necklace. No money, no documents, no plan beyond escape. She runs through Vienna's streets, a society wife fleeing her prison. She sells the necklace to a pawnbroker for a fraction of its value, buys a train ticket to Paris, then London, then a ship to America. She leaves behind wealth, security, and a husband who will spend months trying to find her. But she takes something more valuable: years of weapons knowledge absorbed in those suffocating dinners. Technical secrets that will haunt her memories and, eventually, change the course of technological history. The beautiful prisoner becomes a refugee. Soon, she will become an inventor. But first, she must survive Hollywood, another industry built on caging beautiful women. Hollywood, 1940. Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil sit in her living room, surrounded by sketches, mathematical equations, and dismantled player piano mechanisms scattered across an expensive Persian rug. They make an absurd pair: the glamorous film star and the eccentric composer, the woman Hollywood sees as decorative and the man the music world considers a madman. Together, they're designing a weapon that could alter the balance of naval warfare. Antheil studies her drawings with genuine fascination. Most people dismiss Hedy as merely beautiful. He sees something different: a systematic mind that thinks in patterns and frequencies, in synchronized chaos. She explains the concept again, more precisely this time. Current torpedo guidance systems use fixed radio frequencies. The controller sends signals on one unchanging wavelength. The torpedo receives and obeys. Simple, predictable, fatally vulnerable. Her solution: make the unpredictable systematic. Make chaos follow rules. 88 frequencies, exactly the number of keys on a piano. The torpedo and its controller would both carry identical punched paper rolls, like those in player pianos. These rolls would dictate frequency changes in perfect synchronization. Both devices would hop together through the spectrum, frequency to frequency. Impossible to track, impossible to jam. The enemy would hear only fragments. A signal on 1.2 megahertz for 3 seconds, then silence. Then a burst at 3.7 megahertz, then another gap. By the time they identified one frequency, the torpedo would already be transmitting on another, like trying to catch smoke with your hands. Antheil grins. He understands synchronization. His infamous ballet mécanique synchronized 16-player pianos, airplane propellers, and electric bells into controlled chaos. The critics called it noise. He called it the future of music. Now that same principle could become the future of warfare. They worked through the mathematics, frequency hopping speed, synchronization accuracy. The mechanical systems needed to coordinate two devices separated by ocean water. The engineering challenges are immense, but solvable. Weeks become months. They refine the design, build prototypes, calculate probabilities. The system becomes elegant, complex enough to be unbreakable, simple enough to be manufacturable. December 1941, Pearl Harbor explodes. America enters the war. Suddenly their invention isn't theoretical. It's urgent. Allied ships are being destroyed by U-boat torpedoes. Young men are dying because radio signals can be jammed. Hedy and Antheil file patent 2,292,387. Secret communication system. The language is careful, technical, precise. They describe the frequency hopping mechanism, the synchronization method, the military applications. They offer it to the United States Navy freely. No compensation requested. Only the desire to help win the war. They wait for acknowledgement, for gratitude, for implementation. Instead, they receive rejection wrapped in bureaucratic politeness. The Navy Review Board examines their patent. They see potential, they admit. But the system is too complex, they claim, too difficult to miniaturize, too experimental for wartime deployment. And besides, the primary inventor is a film actress. How seriously can the military take weapons technology designed by a woman famous for playing seductresses on screen? The rejection letter arrives on ordinary paper, flat words delivering devastating dismissal. The Navy suggests Hedy could better serve the war effort by using her celebrity to sell war bonds. Smile for the cameras, sign autographs, leave the serious work of innovation to serious men. Hedy holds the letter in trembling hands. She thinks about those dinners in Vienna, about all that knowledge absorbed while playing the silent, decorative wife, about escaping one cage only to discover another, different bars, same imprisonment. She could save lives. She could change warfare. She could prove that minds matter more than faces. But nobody will listen to the beautiful woman. The patent gathers dust while men continue dying in the Atlantic. Had the Navy understood the potential of her system, the Battle of the Atlantic might have taken a different course. Allied convoys were being hunted relentlessly by German U-boats, their torpedoes guided by radio and their attacks coordinated through frequencies that could be intercepted and jammed. Hedy's frequency-hopping design could have changed that, allowing Allied ships to communicate securely, to guide counter-torpedoes without enemy interference, to turn the tide of a silent war fought not with bullets, but with radio waves. Instead, those ships kept sailing blind into static. Every time a signal was jammed and a vessel sank beneath the Atlantic, the untested invention in a Hollywood actress's desk drawer became another lost chance to save lives. The war continues, and Hedy Lamarr returns to what Hollywood expects of her, playing exotic beauties in forgettable films. Meanwhile, patent 2,222,387 sits in government archives, classified and ignored, another unrecognized solution to a war that rages on. But wars have a way of resurrecting abandoned ideas, and so too did the Cold War. The Cuban Missile Crisis brings the world to the brink of nuclear annihilation, the U.S. Navy desperately needs secure communication systems for its blockade operations. Some forgotten engineer, searching through old patent files, discovers Hedy's frequency-hopping design. Suddenly, the technology deemed too complex, 20 years earlier, becomes essential. The Navy implements the system in sonobuoys, underwater listening devices that track Soviet submarines. The frequency hopping prevents Russian forces from jamming the signals. The actress's rejected invention becomes the backbone of Cold War naval surveillance. Hedy knows nothing about this. No one contacts her. No acknowledgement arrives. Her technology enters active military service without her name attached, without her permission requested, without a single dollar of compensation. The military stamps everything classified. The innovation that could have shortened World War II now protects American interests in a different conflict. Silently, invisibly, anonymously. But technology refuses to stay contained. Engineers studying the frequency hopping system recognize its potential beyond warfare. The principle of synchronized frequency switching could revolutionize civilian communications. Imagine wireless devices that never interfere with each other. Imagine signals that remain secure and stable in crowded electromagnetic environments. The 1980s arrive. Personal computers emerge. The digital revolution begins. Engineers need wireless communication protocols. They need devices to transmit data without wires, without interference, without vulnerability to jamming or eavesdropping. They rediscover Hedy's patent, now declassified, now public, now free for commercial adaptation. The technology she invented to guide torpedoes becomes the foundation for spread-spectrum communications. Her frequency hopping principle evolves into the systems that will connect the modern world: Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, cellular networks. Every wireless device in existence owes its heritage to the secret communication system designed by an actress and a composer in a Hollywood living room. Billions of devices, trillions of dollars in economic value. An entire connected civilization built on her rejected idea. And still, Hedy receives nothing. No royalties, no recognition, no acknowledgement that the wireless world emerged from her wartime innovation. She watches the technology revolution from increasing isolation. Her film career fades. Hollywood forgets her. The public remembers only the black and white images, the beautiful face that once graced magazine covers. Nobody connects that face to the wireless signals now saturating the atmosphere. The irony crushes her. She invented the foundation of modern wireless communication. Her mathematics enables every cell phone call, every Wi-Fi connection, every GPS navigation. But the world knows her only as the actress who was once beautiful. She becomes reclusive, moves to Florida, avoids cameras, interviews, public appearances. The woman who once captivated audiences now hides from the world that refused to see beyond her appearance. Patent 2000-292-387 generates billions in value. Hedy Lamarr lives on modest savings and occasional residuals from films nobody watches anymore. The brilliant mind that could have changed warfare 40 years earlier finally transforms civilian life, but anonymously, invisibly, without the recognition that might have validated her lifetime of being dismissed as merely decorative. Somewhere in military archives and engineering textbooks, her name appears in footnotes, but in the world she actually changed, she remains unknown. The beautiful prisoner escaped her husband's mansion, only to become imprisoned by her own face. The face the world still saw, but never the mind behind it. Florida, 1981. Hedy Lamarr lives alone in a modest apartment, far from the Hollywood mansions and Vienna ballrooms that once defined her life. She's 67 years old. The legendary beauty has aged into anonymity, exactly as she intended. She rarely leaves the apartment. Groceries arrive by delivery. Phone calls go unanswered. The woman who once commanded attention in every room now constructs her life around invisibility, because visibility always meant the same thing: people seeing her face and never her mind. The television plays constantly. News reports about technological breakthroughs, advertisements for new electronic devices, a world transforming through wireless communication while she sits in a darkened room, unknown and unacknowledged. Sometimes she thinks about the patent, about George Antheil, who died in 1959 without ever seeing their invention implemented, about the Navy officers who dismissed her because actresses couldn't possibly understand weapons systems, about all the years she spent being decorative when she could have been transformative. The bitterness has calcified into something harder than anger, a cold acceptance that the world functions exactly as she always knew it would. Beautiful women exist to be looked at, not listened to. Intelligence in a female body becomes invisible, threatening, ultimately disposable. Her film residuals diminish each year. The studios stopped calling decades ago. Fan mail still arrives occasionally. Letters from men who remember her beauty, asking for autographed photos, never mentioning her mind or her mathematics or the patent that changed technological history. She doesn't respond. The isolation deepens. Former friends attempt contact. She ignores them. What would she say? That she invented the foundation of modern wireless communication and received nothing, that her contribution to technology exceeds her contribution to cinema by orders of magnitude. That being beautiful destroyed any chance of being taken seriously. These truths sound like delusions, like an aging actress desperately claiming significance she never possessed. So she remains silent. Her days follow rigid patterns. Morning coffee, television news, crossword puzzles that exercise the mathematical mind nobody wanted, afternoon naps, evening television, sleep, repeat. A brilliant intellect slowly suffocating in routine and obscurity. Sometimes she retrieves the patent from a desk drawer, reads the technical language describing frequency hopping and synchronized communication, runs her fingers across the signatures, hers and George's, collaborators in an innovation the world refused to acknowledge. Patent 292,087. 17 pages of mathematical proof that her mind was always more remarkable than her face. Evidence that will outlive her, even if nobody connects it to her name. The phone rings. She doesn't answer. It's probably another journalist wanting to discuss her films, her beauty, her romances. Never her inventions. Never her contribution to the technology now connecting the planet. The television shows a commercial for mobile phones, business executives making calls without wires. The announcer describes revolutionary communication technology, no mention of frequency hopping, no mention of Hedy Lamarr. She turns off the television. In the silence, she confronts the central tragedy of her existence. She solved problems nobody would let her solve. She offered innovations nobody would accept. She possessed capabilities the world refused to recognize because those capabilities arrived packaged in beauty, and beauty must remain decorative, never functional. The military used her invention. Engineers built empires on her principles. Technology companies generated billions from her mathematics, and Hedy Lamarr sits alone in a Florida apartment, erased from the story of her own creation. The beautiful prisoner finally escaped all her cages, only to discover that invisibility is just another form of imprisonment. But somewhere, in laboratories and patent offices, a few people are beginning to remember, beginning to question, beginning to wonder about the actress who understood frequency hopping before most engineers knew it was possible. Recognition approaches, but will it arrive before she disappears completely? The phone rings in Hedy's Florida apartment. This time she answers. The voice on the other end belongs to a representative from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They're calling about patent 2,292,387, about frequency hopping spread spectrum technology, about an invention that transformed modern communication. They want to give her an award. Hedy, now 83, listens with the caution of someone who has learned not to trust sudden attention. The Pioneer Award, they explain. Recognition for her contribution to wireless communication technology. Acknowledgement that Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, all of it traces back to her wartime innovation. 56 years after filing the patent. 35 years after the Navy secretly implemented her design. Decades after the technology industry built trillion-dollar markets on her mathematical foundation. Finally, someone wants to say thank you, but Hedy declines to attend the ceremony. She's too old, she tells them. Too tired, too reclusive. The woman who once commanded Hollywood premieres now refuses to appear at her own vindication. They mail her the award. It arrives in a simple package. Heavy glass trophy. Engraved words acknowledging her pioneering work in secure communications technology. Physical proof that her mind mattered after all. She places it on a shelf next to old film photographs. The beautiful actress stands beside the brilliant inventor. Same woman, two different prisons, both trapped by a world that could never reconcile the two. Recognition accelerates. Technology historians rediscover her story. Articles appear in engineering journals. The narrative spreads. Hollywood actress invents technology that enables modern wireless communication, the improbable true story everyone ignored for half a century. Interviews are requested. Documentaries are proposed. Suddenly, everyone wants to talk to Hedy Lamarr about her inventions, not her beauty. But it's too late. She's already disappeared into herself. The recognition she desperately needed at 40 arrives at 83. When vindication can no longer repair the decades of dismissal, she gives one interview by phone to a technology magazine. Her voice sounds fragile, disconnected, like she's speaking from a great distance. She describes working with George Antheil, explains the frequency hopping concept, mentions the Navy's rejection. The interviewer asks how it feels to finally receive recognition. Long pause. It feels like someone found a letter I wrote 50 years ago and just now decided to read it, she says. The words haven't changed, only the willingness to listen. She hangs up, doesn't answer when they call back. More awards arrive. Germany declares her an honorary citizen. The technology industry celebrates her as a pioneer. Her name appears in textbooks, documentaries, museum exhibits. The invisible woman becomes visible again, but as a symbol, not a person, a historical figure representing the forgotten women of STEM. Hedy watches this transformation from her apartment. The world creates a legend around her name while ignoring the actual woman behind it. They celebrate her past genius while forgetting she still possesses that same mind, still thinks in frequencies and patterns, still could contribute if anyone asked. But nobody asks. They honor the ghost of who she was, not the reality of who she is. January 2000. Hedy Lamarr dies alone in her Florida apartment. Age 85. The woman who connected the world spent her final years in disconnection. Obituaries celebrate her dual legacy, Hollywood glamour and technological innovation, the beautiful actress who was also a brilliant inventor. As if these were contradictions rather than complementary truths about a complex human being. Today, this exact moment, billions of devices pulse with invisible signals. A teenager in Seoul video calls her grandmother in Sao Paulo. A driver in Munich follows GPS directions. A businessman in New York sends files wirelessly to Tokyo. None of them know they're using technology invented by a woman, Hollywood dismissed as merely beautiful. Hedy Lamarr's frequency hopping principle has become foundational infrastructure, so embedded in modern life that it's essentially invisible. Every Wi-Fi router, every Bluetooth headphone, every GPS satellite, every cellular tower, all descendants of patent 2002-292,387, the invention filed by an actress and a composer who the military deemed unserious. The numbers tell the story the Navy couldn't imagine. The global wireless communication market generates over $5 trillion annually. Smartphones alone connect more than 6 billion people. The Internet of Things links 30 billion devices, an entire planetary nervous system built on the mathematical foundation Hedy designed in her living room. But her legacy extends beyond economics and technology. Her story has become a catalyst, proof that brilliance exists in unexpected people, that genius gets dismissed when it doesn't match expectations, that the world loses innovations by refusing to see past surfaces. Universities now teach her story in engineering programs. Not just the technical achievement, but the societal failure it represents. How many other innovations were lost because brilliant women were told to stay decorative? How many problems remained unsolved because intelligence was gendered male? Young women in STEM programs cite Hedy as inspiration, the actress who was also an inventor, the beauty who possessed mathematical genius, the prisoner who escaped multiple cages, her husband's control, Hollywood's limitations, history's dismissal, to leave a legacy that transcends all of them. Technology companies have begun acknowledging their debt. November 9th, Hedy's birthday, is now recognized as Inventors' Day in Germany and Austria. Her image appears on currency, stamps, monuments. The face that once trapped her now propagates her story, carrying her name into spaces that once excluded women entirely. But the real legacy lives in transformation, in the girls who learn her story and decide they can be both brilliant and themselves, in the engineers who recognize that innovation comes from unexpected sources. In the slow, painful evolution of industries that once gate-kept genius behind arbitrary barriers, Hedy proved something profound, that the same mind can create art and technology, can understand beauty and mathematics, can exist in multiple spaces simultaneously without diminishing any of them. She wasn't an actress who happened to invent something. She was a complete human being whose capabilities extended in multiple directions, as all humans do when allowed. The tragedy isn't just that she was dismissed. It's that her dismissal was systematic, predictable, woven into the fabric of institutions that couldn't imagine beauty and brilliance coexisting in female form. The triumph is that her invention survived anyway. That despite rejection, despite dismissal, despite decades of anonymity, her mathematics proved too powerful to suppress forever. Frequency hopping refused to stay silent. Now every wireless signal becomes a monument, every connection a vindication, every device a whisper of her name across the electromagnetic spectrum. Hedy Lamarr died unknown, but she lives immortal in the invisible signals connecting humanity. The beautiful prisoner finally escaped, not into freedom but into ubiquity. Her mind, dismissed for decades, now enables billions of minds to connect across distances she could never have imagined. The world that refused to listen finally hears her. Too late for the woman, just in time for the future she created.